here with us to celebrate the ceasefire today. We survived today, but we won't forget. I wish this peace stays.
Well, that was Amal sending that video in this morning. We've heard again from her in the hours that followed. She sent in this, her feelings about just some of the details she's hearing on this deal.
The warplanes still hovering above our heads, and I'm still scared actually, and I'm not sure about the ceasefire, what is happening. Can you hear it? I don't know, but it seems that the ceasefire isn't activated yet.
Well, just one person on the ground, and you can see just how emotions change through the course of the hours. The smiles at the start of that video that we were just hearing, and then the concerns, and you could hear the sounds, the jets above her, or the rumbles from artillery. So just a flavour there of some of what is happening there in Gaza around now, as all that diplomacy and the Security Cabinet are currently meeting. Well, let's turn to another aspect for the next couple of minutes, because the prospect of peace feels just a little closer for just one student who's arrived from Gaza into Dublin recently. She was Malak Alazwaraki, who joins us live now from Dublin. And Malak, thank you so much for being here with us. I want to start by asking you what you thought when you heard of the details of this deal over the last 12 hours, your reaction.
I was studying math because I have a math test tomorrow, and then
Well, apologies. We will try to restore that line, because it's a fascinating story, because Malak actually studied throughout the course of the war over the last couple of years to complete her studies, and finally got a scholarship. She was offered places in Dublin, at Cambridge, at Harvard. She chose Dublin in the end. So it's a fascinating story. So hopefully in the next few moments we'll try to re-establish that line. Whilst we try to do that, let me show you the live pictures, because let's go to the situation on the ground in Gaza first of all, because these are the pictures we are showing you this evening. And you heard from Amal, just one person there a few moments ago, about her joy at the prospect of a ceasefire. But of course the military action is continuing, and their worry on the ground in these final few hours, if that ceasefire is actually agreed. Let me take you from there to Hostages Square, where of course Elise Doucet has been broadcasting through the day. Well, evening there, and of course they wait to hear from Israel's Security Cabinet and main cabinet, because one by one they will hear the details and vote upon it, because that is what they are waiting for, the next stage. And then the Israelis say within 24 hours of ratification, then the ceasefire kicks in. You can see Donald Trump there, reports that he will be in Jerusalem on Sunday. So everything pointing to the deal being done, and then the mechanics of the hostage releases then kicking in. So that is the latest in terms of the live pictures. But of course one of the main priorities is the hostages, dozens of hostages still in captivity. BBC Verify has been looking into what we know about them. Here's Merlin Thomas.
It's been 2 years since Hamas attacked Israel, killing around 1,200 people and kidnapping 251. Now, with the very real prospect of a ceasefire in sight, BBC Verify has examined what we know about the remaining hostages. On the 7th of October, when Hamas and other armed factions attacked Israel, they killed people dancing at Nova Music Festival, families in their homes, and soldiers at military bases. The youngest hostage, Kafir Bibas, was just 9 months old when he was taken alongside his 4-year-old brother Ariel, their mother Shiri, and father Yarden. Now, 48 hostages still remain in captivity. These are some of the locations they were taken from in southern Israel. Since then, Israel has waged a war on Gaza, killing more than 67,000 Palestinians. That's according to the Hamas-run health ministry. One of Israel's central objectives has been to free the 255 hostages in Gaza, including 4 who had been taken hostage prior to the 7th of October attack. Of those 48 still in Gaza, Israel believes 20 of them are alive. The largest number of hostages returned has been as part of ceasefire deals or in separate releases, 148 in total. So far, Israel has recovered 51 hostage bodies from Gaza. 8 hostages have been rescued alive in Israeli operations. Hostage handovers have been staged by Hamas, like this one in February, with crowds of Palestinians watching on in Gaza. Little to nothing is known about the location of the remaining hostages. Throughout the war, Hamas has published videos of hostages speaking under duress, mainly in locations we can't identify. But footage posted by Hamas last month shows 2 hostages in a vehicle in Gaza City. In this shot, you can see a street lined with rubble. The family of this hostage, Guy Gilboa Dalal, gave consent for this video to be shown. We've chosen to use a still. It's not clear when this was filmed, but the footage is dated as 28th of August and was posted online on the 5th of September. Now this is rare because it means identifiable features allowed us to confirm they were in Gaza City. For example, in this section of the video, we matched this building in the background with this publicly available image. At that time, the Israeli military had said it planned to capture the city and pave the way for its expanded ground offensive. In recent weeks, as the offensive in Gaza City continued, Hamas took the unusual step of releasing some information about 2 of the hostages, Omri Miran and Matan Angrest. They posted on the online messaging platform Telegram to say they'd lost communication with them as a result of intense bombardments in the neighbourhoods of al-Sabra and Tel al-Hawa, which are here. And Hamas also said Israeli forces must immediately withdraw to the south of Street 8 and halt aerial operations for 24 hours. For Hamas to announce the apparent locations of hostages is unprecedented. Meanwhile, in Gaza, 2 years on, the war continues to rage. And 2 years on in Israel, the families of hostages desperately wait for good news, fearing the worst, hoping for the best.
Merlin Thomas, we are going to spend the next half an hour answering some of the questions you have sent in on this Gaza ceasefire deal. That's here next on BBC News. Welcome to special coverage here on BBC News across online, social and on the World Service, answering your questions about events in Gaza. Well, the breakthrough has happened. Agreement has finally been reached between Israel and Hamas on the first phase of a ceasefire plan for Gaza. With me to answer all of the questions you have sent in, Lise Doucet is with us, Rushdie Abu-Alouf and also Sumi Somaskanda. So let's get cracking straight away to the first question, and to Lise first of all. It is difficult, Lise, to exaggerate the significance of this moment, isn't it?
Matthew, we have lost count of how many times in almost 2 years we said the deal is closed, closer than ever before, almost done, only for Israelis and Palestinians and people the world over being disappointed when again Gaza descends into even greater war and the agony of the families of the Israeli hostages deepens. This took an extraordinary push, an unprecedented momentum, as we've been reporting. And it took the real focus by President Donald Trump for the first time, zeroing in on the need to end the war, to end the military operations, to bring the hostages home, and to start a process of looking at the future. This is a breakthrough, but there is still a big road ahead.
Let me bring Sumi in. And Sumi, just briefly give us the central planks of this agreement.
Yeah, Matthew, it's important to say, of course, when President Trump and the Israeli Prime Minister unveiled their 20-point framework for peace, that really was a roadmap, not only for the first phase of how these two sides would reach a ceasefire, but also for the next questions of governance in Gaza, for example. What has been reached is a ceasefire. This is the first phase, as has been said. And so what has been agreed is the release of the living and deceased hostages, although, as we've been reporting on air, it is unclear on the timing of when the deceased hostages, their remains would be released, because we understand that Hamas is also trying to locate the remains of those deceased. We also know that Israel has agreed to withdraw to a certain line. We understand from a spokesperson from negotiations that Israel would withdraw to about 53% of the territory in the Gaza Strip. And of course, and critically here, as we know, that aid has been a big issue, getting aid into the Gaza Strip. Aid will now start to enter in the peace framework that Donald Trump had agreed with the Israeli Prime Minister. That was intended to be 600 trucks a day. We understand from spokespeople who took part in negotiations, initially it would be about 400 trucks of aid a day into Gaza to help alleviate the suffering and starvation that we've seen play out there over the last several months. But that would then be added, of course, as the situation, as the days go on. So that is the central plank of what has been agreed. But it's important to note this is a ceasefire plan, and the next steps still have to be negotiated. The questions of where Gaza goes from here, who will be governing in Gaza, and what type of force would be in Gaza.
Yes, and I've got so many questions on all of those areas, and also including aid, which you touched on. Rushdie, let me bring you in, because, of course, Lise, referencing the hostages, how many hostages are still being held? How many are alive? And in terms of the numbers of Palestinians likely to be released, what is the likely number?
Well, they agreed on all of the life hostages, which we believe about 20 Israelis are held hostages in Gaza, in addition to, I think, 30, maybe more, in total 60 or 58 people, dead bodies. When it comes to the Palestinian prisoners, there is 250 Palestinians who are serving life sentence in prison, out of 290, the total number of people serving the same time in prison. And there is 1,700 Palestinians who were arrested after 7th of October. But Israel put a condition here that none of them were a part of the attack. So all of the people who were attacking Israel will not be, none of them will be released. So the people who were arrested from inside Gaza as part of the Israeli military operations in Gaza are about 5,000, according to a Palestinian official. And Israel would release 1,700 people, and all of them will be back home to Gaza. Most of the 250 people will be deported outside Gaza and West Bank to other countries. And we have seen this happen back in January during the first ceasefire.
Lise, let me ask you a little more detail about aid, because Subsana sending a question about when the UN will actually provide aid. How much aid is likely to get in? Who will distribute it? Because, of course, the UN has been blocked over recent months. Where will it actually go?
Yeah, this is a big question, and everyone, most of all the Palestinians in Gaza, some of whom have been living on the brink of famine and children dying at a growing rate from hunger, are waiting for that aid to start flowing. I know from having been to the Egypt border, at least on the Egyptian side, thousands of trucks backed up with desperately needed humanitarian aid, not able to pass through the Israeli inspections to enter into Gaza. Every aid agency we've spoken to in the past few days said that they have a lot of aid in warehouses, either in Egypt or in Israel. There's some warehouses in the central part of the Gaza Strip in Deir al-Balah, which has become a sort of a humanitarian hub because of the Israeli advances and control in southern Gaza and the destruction in places like Rafah. So they are ready to roll. We don't have, I've asked everyone what are the details. There are a few details on how this humanitarian operation would proceed. But in recent weeks, there has been a bit more aid getting in, and Israel has allowed more room for the United Nations agencies and others working with them to distribute some of the aid alongside the controversial Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, described by aid agencies as a death trap. So many Palestinians have been killed in the rush and the chaos to grab on to some of that aid. So I think what we can expect is that hundreds of trucks, 400, Sumi said 400 initially. They hope even more if the ceasefire holds, will go rumbling across the border, as they did during that ceasefire of January to March. Hundreds and hundreds of trucks went across the borders every day. And that brings down the prices. It eliminates the black market. So there is real an improvement in life, in food aid, in access to supplies all round.
Sumi, Israel's foreign minister did an interview on Fox News saying that Israel has no desire to restart the war once the hostages are out. That, of course, is one of the big fears. A question from Niall: how can we trust Israel when they acted in bad faith previously and broke the previous ceasefire back in March?
That is a question that, of course, many are asking, but it's important to keep in mind what has changed is the circumstances since that first ceasefire, or that initial ceasefire when President Trump entered office, went into place and then fell apart. And we understand also from our colleagues at CBS News, and Lise, of course, has been reporting this as well, that what seemed to change for President Trump and the Trump administration was indeed Israel's strike on Doha, targeting Hamas officials, and that appeared to really anger President Trump and members of his administration. And we have seen that President Trump, through much reporting here, we understand, had put more pressure on the Israeli prime minister to make some concessions to come to an agreement. We've seen through his social media posts, of course, that he has continued to put pressure on Hamas, threatening, obliteration, destruction if they don't agree. So those are some of the factors that have gotten to us to a point where President Trump and his administration believe they have put sufficient pressure on the Israelis as well as Hamas to ensure that this agreement holds. And I think the fact that the president, as we understand, is traveling to the region, again, our colleagues at CBS reporting that that would include Israel and Egypt, as we understand to this point, gives also more weight to the sense that they really see this as an agreement that not only will hold in this first ceasefire phase, but must hold in the next negotiations. Of course, the details of that will be very, very difficult, and it will take a lot of effort from the Trump administration and pressure continue down the line to ensure that it doesn't fall apart.
Rushdie, another potential big obstacle, of course, is that question about will Hamas disarm, and if they do, how?
Well, Hamas said it clearly today in a statement put by one of their senior leaders that as long as the occupation exists, the weapon is legitimate. That's what he said, which give indication that Hamas is not willing to give up its arms. And we understand that their military commander in Gaza was sending a message to the political leadership that he is, under any circumstances, unwilling to leave Gaza or to leave his weapon there. So it is going to be very, very complicated issue. The issue of the weapon was discussed before with the Egyptian and the Qataris, and Egypt offered Hamas many times to have the weapon in some storage under Egyptian and Arab observation, which I don't think Hamas at that time liked this idea. They believe that the weapon should exist as long as the occupation exists, and they can only negotiate it if there is a Palestinian state, which doesn't look like we are going to have any achievement to create a Palestinian state very soon. So this is one of the main obstacles, main issue for that they are leaving it to the next stage.
Yes.
What is Hamas also fear the most is that Israel won't go to the next stage, and we have seen in their statements twice today mentioning that a guarantee has to be there from the Americans.
Lise, a twin question, one from Jack and one from me. Jack asks, how will the deal be enforced? And actually, who will govern Gaza in the coming months?
Well, it is a big question. As Rushdie has spoken to, that deals in the past have broken down. Many are asking, well, will Israel return to its military operations as it did during the ceasefire earlier this year? I spoke a short time ago to Qatar's chief spokesperson, Dr. Majid Al-Ansari, and asked him about this. And there is a feeling now that there is a momentum pushed by President Trump's new focus on ensuring that this war does not start. He already threatened, he was already asked that before the deal was done, what happens if Israel does return to war? And he said, well, I have ways of exerting pressure and I will use that pressure. And so they are hoping that the momentum will gather, but there's no denying that there are risks in this proposal. As to who governs Gaza, in the Hamas statement, they said they agreed with the point in one of the 20 points in President Trump's plan that Gaza will initially be run by technocrats with no political affiliation. They will need experts. Gaza lies in utter ruin. That more than 90% of it is simply rubble. There's no schools for children to go to. The health facilities lie in ruin. Just the basics of life do not exist. And so it's going to be a Herculean task. They've got to move in the bulldozers, move in the supplies, get the resources. And let's emphasize this, that the wealthy Gulf states who have built and rebuilt Gaza time and again have said they're not going to put money in yet again if they think that Gaza will again be attacked and will be destroyed again. So they need guarantees. If Israel, if the world wants that, what will be billions to go into Gaza,
yes,
they have to give guarantees that this time it will work.
Rushdie, quite a few questions on this particular topic, and it's a really simple question. Will Palestinians be able to return to their homes in the north?
Yes, as soon as Israel withdrawn from the Rashid Road or the Coastal Road, you know there is two roads that linking Gaza from north to south. There is Salah ad-Din Road, which is the bigger one and more appropriate for people to use, but it's closed and it's part of the new deal. It will remain closed because Israel is having active operation in the area. So the only road that is open, the road that people use to flee, like 3 weeks ago from Gaza City, where about 700 people fled the fight. And this is the only road for the people to go back. Today, the people tried, because the initial news was that the ceasefire would go into effect at 12. So they started to go back when the Israelis stopped them, the Israeli tank shield stopped them. So this is the only way to go back. But given the scale of destruction in the north, even when back in January, many of the people went back, or hundreds of thousands went back, they found their homes are not standing anymore. And since then, maybe thousands or tens of thousands of homes, additional homes were destroyed. But we have seen people prefer to stay in their neighborhood, the places where they belong, and most of them, they try to repair one room out of a building, or setting up a makeshift house or a tent over the rubble of their buildings. But people insist that they want to have the right to return to their neighborhoods.
Sumi, let me ask you a question about the Nobel Peace Prize, because Marlon has questioned the timing of this deal with that announcement from Nobel and the committee that is coming tomorrow. And of course, Donald Trump has been really open about saying he wants a Nobel Peace Prize for his work here and elsewhere, saying it would be an insult if he didn't get it. So give me a thought, your analysis on the timing of all of that within this equation.
Yeah, well, as you said, Matthew, he's made no secret about the fact that he believes he should receive this prize. Of course, we know, as it's being announced on Friday, the nominations for this year's prize were closed in January. So President Trump will not be awarded the Nobel Peace Prize on Friday. But there is speculation that President Trump is thinking about next year's nomination, of course, and wants to receive this prize. And we know world leaders have said they would nominate him for it. And in fact, President Zelensky of Ukraine saying today that if Donald Trump could broker a ceasefire for the war in his country, that he would also nominate President Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize. As for the timing, yes, of course, timed around this week where the Peace Prize is being awarded. But of course, we have to remember that just 2 days ago, it was the anniversary of the October 7th attack. And Donald Trump, he, of course, understands that symbolism, what these dates mean, and wanted to be able to say in this week in particular, sending his negotiators to Egypt to take part and saying basically that this deal has to get done this week in the coming days, that this was a big part of it for him. But as for the Nobel Peace Prize this year, it is something, of course, that Donald Trump has said, oh, they're going to give it to somebody else, but it should be me. Let's see what the decision is next year. He would see this as a prize he absolutely should win if this ceasefire agreement holds.
We've only got 5 minutes left, so let's whiz through because still lots of questions to get through. Lise, I'll ask you a twin question. Is there a danger that Benjamin Netanyahu's government is torpedoed by the far right who've held his coalition together? And a question from Asan saying, what happens to the various arrest warrants for Benjamin Netanyahu and others?
Two very different questions. First of all, it's a minority view, the far-right ministers who have made it clear they will oppose this deal. Other members of the cabinet, opposition figures, have made it clear they will provide a safety net for Prime Minister Netanyahu should his government collapse. No one wants to say no to President Trump. On those arrest warrants, well, Prime Minister Netanyahu found a way to fly to the United States to meet President Trump. There are ways for him to get around it, but certainly that is a dark cloud that hangs over his head.
Sumi, a question to you. How realistic is the prospect of a two-state solution that we often hear that phrase coming out of a variety of capitals?
Well, it's certainly part of the 20-point peace framework that President Trump had unveiled a week and a half ago, certainly a pathway to a Palestinian state. But the reality here is that if you listen to what President Trump has said and many members of his cabinet and indeed his ambassador to Israel, it hasn't been a priority for this administration. And it is hard to imagine that this administration will make a massive push for that to be addressed in the coming weeks. At the same time, we know that the U.S.'s allies have, during the UN General Assembly in New York, recognized a Palestinian state. President Trump and his administration criticized that heavily. From the U.S. perspective, it appears that this administration has moved further away from that two-state solution than any administration previous. And so in that sense, the pressure that President Trump would put on the Israelis to back down from the prime minister's position that he stated, that there cannot be a Palestinian state, would be reward to Hamas, that might not be as heavy as the pressure put on to reach a ceasefire.
Rushdie, a quick one, because in terms of the wider region, the last 2 years, it has changed everything, hasn't it? To not just Gaza, Lebanon, Iran, Syria.
Yes, and we have seen Hamas in the statement thanking Lebanon for its supporting of Gaza. Especially, we have seen the Hamas official website, military website, with putting a picture for Mr. Hassan Nasrallah, the head of Hezbollah. He was assassinated by Israel, saying that, thank you, you have not forgotten Gaza. We have seen all the time Hamas appreciating the attacks from Yemen. They still appreciate Iran and thank Iran for all of its effort to support Gaza. But since October the 7th until now, if you have seen what Israel have done in all of the regions like Lebanon, Syria, Yemen, Gaza, West Bank, and Iran, it is changing, I think, the region to a way it gives more positive, like more left-right people or more good people chances, like we have seen United Arab Emirates, Saudi, the Egyptian, the Muslims, Turkey, Qatar, all of them were joining the effort to achieve this moment. This could not be happening if all of the regime, the Syrian regime, Hezbollah, and the pressure from Iran would have been exist in the same way.
A final question to you all, 30 seconds if you could, because we are seeing optimism finally after months and years of really a desperate situation, but there are multiple dangers ahead, aren't there? Rushdie, to you first of all.
Yes, of course, and everyone in Gaza said that our sense of joy is mixed with fear because they have seen in the past a day where all of their life was a change again after like 60 days of calm back from January to March, and this is what the people in Gaza are fear the most. They express this in their social media account. They keep saying about it that we need a trust, we need to be able to trust that the war is over.
Sumi.
Absolutely. And President Trump, as I said earlier, and his administration will continue to have to engage with all sides and all parties here to ensure that this agreement goes forward. But there is a great sense of relief and, honestly, for the Trump administration, accomplishment that this ceasefire agreement was agreed in the first place.
A final word from Lise, from you.
The only way this is going to work is that if the world keeps its eye on this process. All of the mediators, most of all President Donald Trump, cannot look away. Otherwise, it could fall apart.
Well, thank you. And we have run out of time. Thanks for joining us on this BBC News special across online, TV and radio. Thanks to Lise, to Rushdie and Sumi, and thanks to all of you for sending in all of your questions. I hope we got to your questions. I know that some were left unasked, but thanks for joining us here on BBC News. Bye for now.
Live from Hostages Square in Tel Aviv, I'm Lise Doucette. You're watching BBC News. Jubilation in Tel Aviv and Gaza as Israel and Hamas move towards the first phase of a ceasefire deal. Israel's cabinet is now meeting to ratify the deal, and that would enable a ceasefire to begin. This is the scene here live in Tel Aviv. It's hoped the first of the Israeli hostages could be released by Monday. In Gaza, the BBC understands Israel is using artillery to stop Palestinians from going north toward their homes in Gaza City. The United Nations says it's ready to move immediately in bringing desperately needed aid into the Gaza Strip. In this hour, I'll be speaking to our correspondents about what happens next and the toughest of issues still on the table. Welcome to BBC News. You join us here in Hostages Square in the heart of Tel Aviv. What has been a gathering space for weeks on end, month after month, with calls to end the war, to bring the hostages home. Tonight, there is a mood of cautious hope as Israel's security cabinet now meets, and there's a hope it will ratify the ceasefire deal hammered out in the Egyptian Red Sea resort of Sharm el-Sheikh, which will see the release of the last of the Israeli hostages alive and dead, and the partial withdrawal of Israeli troops from Gaza after the agreement was reached on the first phase of a ceasefire agreement for Gaza. That deal, which was first announced in the early hours of the morning here in this region by President Trump, would see the release of 48 Israeli hostages, alive or dead, in exchange for hundreds of Palestinian prisoners, the pullout of Israeli forces from parts of the Gaza Strip, and the entry of much more humanitarian aid that's desperately needed in the enclave. Well, throughout the day, there has been celebration here in Hostages Square in Tel Aviv. The crowds have grown ever louder. This is the scene from earlier in the day, waving Israeli and American flags. And all around the square, there are photographs of the hostages which were seized in the October the 7th attacks by Hamas that triggered this war 2 years ago this week. Families of the hostages and their friends who've gathered here express enormous relief and happiness that President Trump has finally pushed for this deal to happen. And in the Gaza Strip, there has been celebration too. More than 2 million Palestinians have been displaced by Israeli military operations for months on end, some being displaced as many as 12 and 15 times. More than 67,000 have been killed and many thousands more have been maimed. But the ceasefire has not come into force yet. Heavy bombardments by Israeli warplanes have continued throughout the day. The plumes of smoke, as you can see, have been rising from the coastal enclave. A spokesperson from the Israeli government said the ceasefire will only take hold once the Security Cabinet and then the full cabinet approve the deal. That's expected to happen in the next few hours. In the Gaza Strip, the BBC also understands that Israel is still using artillery to stop Palestinians from trying to move north along the Al Rashid Road towards the north of the Strip to their homes in Gaza City. These are the images now. You can see the smoke rising throughout the day. We've seen these images of people walking on the road. Those live feeds have been coming into our newsroom. After these explosions, the flood of people stopped as people waited by the side of the road, waiting for the go-ahead to go back to what is left of their homes. Let's just take a look now to see where this deal lies now. What are the difficulties in its implementation, and then what could lie ahead? We're joined now by Barbara Plett-Usher, who joins us from Jerusalem. Tom Bateman is in the U.S. Capital, Washington. And our Gaza correspondent, Rushdie Abu-Alouf, now joins us in Istanbul. First, Rushdie, as you know, during the day there was still some confusion as to whether all of the details had been negotiated, including that list of 250 prisoners, many of them serving consecutive life sentences, as well as those of 1,700 detained during the last 2 years of war. Is that list now done and all the other details?
It is done, and Hamas have received it. I've just got a SMS from one of the Hamas advisor in the Sharm el-Sheikh saying that Hamas has received the list, and now they are waiting for the Israeli government to approve it. But Hamas now knew exactly who's going to be released, and most likely, he didn't say, but most likely Marwan Barghouti are not part of it. And most important issue for Hamas, that is Abbas al-Sayed and other Abdullah al-Barghouti are also not included, which is two more senior Hamas military commanders in the prison, are not going to be part of the releasing. But this was an outstanding issue throughout all the day, and there was a meeting, like continuous meeting for hours to finalize this issue, which is now, I think it's done. There is some rumor that Hamas delegation have met with a senior American diplomat in Doha, which this source didn't confirm it to us yet. But many Arab channels and local media are reporting that there was such meeting, and it's part of the American trying to say to Hamas that we can guarantee that the war won't resume. We have seen Hamas very, very worried about this point. They mentioned it 3 times in their statements since yesterday, that the guarantee is essential for them, that Israel will not go back or walk away from this deal, and they want the second deal. He said also that they agreed that within 72 hours of the hostages release, the negotiation for the next stage would start. That's what he said, that they have agreed upon with all the mediators.
Stay with us, Rushdie. Let's now cross to Washington. President Trump is chairing the cabinet meeting.
Process. I'd rather not tell you what they have to do to get them. There are places you don't want to be, but we are getting the hostages back on Tuesday, Monday or Tuesday, and that'll be a day of joy. I'm going to try and make a trip over. We're going to try and get over there, and we're working on the timing, the exact timing. We're going to go to Egypt, where we'll have a signing, an additional signing. We've already had a signing representing me, but we're going to have an official signing. And the amazing thing is all of the countries over there, from Qatar to Saudi Arabia to UAE to all of them, I mean, the rich ones, the less than rich ones, they've all come together, something which is amazing, actually. They've all come together for this, and they're really probably the best relationships they've ever had. So it's been really something incredible that nobody thought it was possible to get it done. And very importantly, the hostages are coming back. As you know, they consider them hostages. They talk about them as hostages, but there are approximately 28 dead people, mostly young, mostly men, but and boys. I mean, boys. The one woman talked about her baby. Her baby's 25 years old, but you know, to her it's her baby, and we're bringing them home. We're getting everything, and to those parents, the dead young man is just as important, as though this person were alive. It's amazing. I've never seen anything quite like it. I've been very much involved. I've never seen anything quite like it. But it's really peace in the Middle East. And you remember October 7th was terrible, but also from the Hamas standpoint, they probably lost 70,000 people. That's big retribution. That's big retribution. But at some point, that whole thing has to stop, and we're going to see to it. Gaza is going to be slowly redone. You have tremendous wealth in that part of the world by certain countries, and just a small part of that, what they make will do wonders for Gaza. And I think you're going to see some tremendous countries stepping up and putting up a lot of money and taking care of things. But there's tremendous spirit like I haven't seen. And even the news, I won't call it fake news for this purpose, because they really were very fair today, I must tell you, in all cases. But they covered it very well. They covered it very fairly. Everybody loves it, everybody. People that were never giving us a fair shake, frankly, they can't even believe it. They're so, they're amazed by it. A lot of people are. But it was just everything came together. I think the attack was very important on Iran, because let's say that didn't happen, they'd probably by now have a nuclear weapon, numerous nuclear weapons, and therefore, even if we signed a deal, there'd be a big dark cloud over it, and it wouldn't be the same thing. So Iran's different, but Iran is on peace now. They've informed us, and they've acknowledged that they are totally in favor of this deal. They think it's a great thing. So we appreciate that, and we'll work with Iran. As you know, we have major sanctions on Iran and lots of other things. We would like to see them be able to rebuild their country too, but they can't have a nuclear weapon. So I want to express my tremendous gratitude to the leaders of Qatar, Egypt, and Turkey for helping us reach this incredible day and for being there. They were there with us all the way. And of course, as you know, Saudi Arabia and Jordan and so many. I will tell you, President Erdogan was personally involved in dealing with Hamas and some of the others. He's been great. They've all been really amazing. Indonesia's been amazing. Indonesia's been fantastic. The whole world has come together for this. People that didn't get along, people that didn't like each other, neighboring countries that frankly didn't like each other, but now it's just this moment in time. So we look forward to welcoming the hostages, like you can't believe, home to their families, and that'll take place early next week. We hope Monday or Tuesday. And all Americans should be proud of the role that our country has played in bringing this terrible conflict to an end. And I want to thank, some of the people, JD, you were fantastic, and Pete, you were great. Marco was fantastic. Some of you were very much involved. I'm looking around. So indirectly, I think almost everybody in this room was involved. Susie, I want to thank you very much. You were incredible. You've done an incredible job. So, and yes, John, what you've done was invaluable. CIA, John Ratcliffe, and he's done an incredible job. So I want to thank you all, and if I'm missing anybody, I apologize, but you've been amazing. And then you have Steve Witkoff, who worked so hard. And you remember we settled 7, this is number 8, we settled 7 wars, or major conflicts, but wars. And this is number 8. And the one that I thought would be maybe the quickest of all would be Russia-Ukraine, and I think that's going to happen too. But in the meantime, they're losing about 7,000 people a week, and that seems pretty bad. They're losing mostly soldiers, young soldiers, and they're getting killed. And while it doesn't affect us in a lot of ways, we've got a big ocean in between, you don't want to see that happen. It was a big mistake. That war should have never happened. It would have never happened if I were president. So we're here this morning for a cabinet meeting as my administration continues to deliver for the American people, despite the radical left lunatics that shut down our government. You have Democrats that they have no leadership. We don't even know who to deal with over there. At least they know who to deal with. We have no idea who we're dealing with over there. It's like they have no idea what they're doing. Republicans have voted repeatedly to pass a clean, nonpartisan bill to reopen government at the same funding levels. We're not going to do anything only good for health care. We're really, I think, become the party of good health care. And they keep using health care as a cudgel. They want to try and get everyone thinking about health care. We're the ones that are saving health care. In fact, one of the things we're doing is we're going to be reducing the cost 100%, 200, 300, 500%, and even more than that, because as you know, we're in the process of favored nations right now. We've exercised applause, because we were subsidizing the entire world. The entire world pays a fraction of what the United States has been paying. And we've numerous Pfizer and other companies have already signed it.
A moment for President Trump to savor this agreement that was reached in the early hours of the morning. And even though he is a president which likes to take credit, saying that he solves a war every month, it's undeniable that it was his decision to focus more closely on trying to bring this war to an end, exerting pressure on his strategic ally Israel, his close political friend Benjamin Netanyahu. In a way, it is said no American president has been willing to do before, has helped to move this process forward, exerting pressure on Hamas to come to the table to do the deal. He paid tribute to the many Arab states who have played an absolutely key role in what has been widely described as a new momentum in protracted efforts to end this war for many, many months. The mediators, Qatar, Egypt, and Turkey, they too were at the table in the Egyptian Red Sea resort of Sharm el-Sheikh, along with the U.S. envoys. President Trump paid tribute to his special envoy, Steve Witkoff, saying that he has been working so hard. Their presence at the talks too signaled the real determination of the United States, pushed by President Trump, to end the military operations, to move towards a ceasefire deal, and for the hostages to come home. President Trump has clearly been touched by the ordeal of Israeli hostages. He often, as he did just now, refers to the stories that he has heard from them, beginning by talking about how one of the parents of one of the hostages referred to their baby, a 25-year-old, but still calling their child a baby. This has really moved him. And I have to say that here in Hostages Square, the organizers of this forum for the hostages and missing and the families of the missing have spoken about how hard they worked to get President Trump's attention and how relieved and grateful they are that he finally put it on his agenda. President Trump also said, addressing his cabinet, that he hopes to come to the region, to come to Egypt as well as to Israel, to try to celebrate this deal. It is only the first phase of the deal, and while the American cabinet is meeting, so too here in Israel. The Israeli Security Cabinet is meeting. There's certain to be discussion, arguments about this deal around that table, with far right-wing ministers still fiercely opposed to stopping the war, accusing Prime Minister Netanyahu of selling out. But it is widely expected to pass. It will then be put to the full Israeli cabinet, and there it is also expected to be adopted despite any opposition. And that then would then trigger the message, the orders to Israeli forces to cease fire, to start pulling back to the lines which were agreed for their withdrawal from parts of the Gaza Strip, and, if all goes as planned, the beginning of bringing the last of the Israeli hostages home, releasing Palestinian prisoners in exchange, and hundreds of trucks packed with desperately needed aid should start moving into Gaza. Huge relief, cautious hope. A short time ago, I spoke here in the square to Rotem Cooper. He's the son of Amiram Cooper. He was one of the 250 people taken hostage on October the 7th, killed in captivity. He told me earlier how he felt when he heard news about this deal.
You know, a sense of disbelief in a good way, is this really true? In the larger sense, we are one big group, the families, the hostage families, and we're fighting as a group, and everything that we imagined would happen, that we wanted to happen, the campaign we waged in the streets, in the squares, going to the Israeli parliament, traveling across the world, trying to sway public opinion, bring about world leaders, all of a sudden, it's upon us. Is it really happening? Let's check the news. Let's check all of the news. Wake up the wife. Yeah, we have some good news. And then, of course, there is the second, my own personal case. My father, who was brutally abducted by Hamas from the kibbutz with my mother, and was alive for 4 months. At the age of 84, somehow survived against all odds in the dark tunnels of Hamas. And for him, it's too late. We're going to be lucky, so to speak, to bury him. That's something to expect to.
How important is it for you that his remains be brought home?
It's important. It's important to bring some sense of closure. This business would not be closed for a long time, because after we're going to get all of the hostages, and after we do the mournings and the burials, we're going to go to the phase of advocating for a fully and transparent investigation what's happened here. Hamas is a terrible terrorist organization. It's not serving anybody, it's not even the Palestinians. They should be eradicated. It looks like they are being eradicated. I'm talking about the Israeli government, the Israeli IDF. Why have they failed so miserably to protect my community in Kibbutz Nir Oz? And why have they done so little to get my father, especially the Israeli government, especially the Israeli Prime Minister, why have they done so little to get him out in time?
So there's anger mixed, still anger.
There is a lot of anger. There is a lot of anger. We're not going to forget. We're not going to forget on both sides. We're not going to forget that on the Palestinian side, it was way much more than Hamas. Into Kibbutz Nir Oz, in addition to their own terrorists, hundreds, thousands of villagers came, raped, murdered, and burglarized the place. We're not going to forget that. That is much larger than Hamas. On the Israeli side, we are not going to forget the sense of abandonment and maybe something that even amount to torpedo efforts to release hostages in time when they were still alive. You don't get points for bringing hostages that were alive in bags. You shouldn't get any points for it if you're a politician.
As you heard there, and felt anger laced with grief, Rotem Kuber, who lost his father in the ordeal in Gaza. Let's go back now to those remarks that President Trump made at his cabinet meeting a short time ago. Our State Department correspondent, Tom Bateman, former Middle East correspondent, joins us from Washington. Tom, as we know, President Trump is very quick to take credit, but in this case, it is due. His personal intervention, his focus on ending this war clearly made a huge difference.
Yeah, I think he had shifted positions over the course of several weeks. If you think back to the beginning of this year, Lise, where the Americans were at on this, Donald Trump was saying, the US is going to take over Gaza, the Palestinians can leave, it's going to become the Riviera of the Middle East. It gave a green light to the far-right ultra-nationalists in Israel. From their perspective, they felt to a post-war scenario where basically they felt that they would be able to take over the Gaza Strip. We have seen President Trump move fundamentally, basically in a very short space of time in recent weeks, where I think there was increasing irritation on his part with Mr. Netanyahu, particularly over the course of the war. It wasn't lost on him the degree to which Israel was increasingly isolated internationally over its conduct in Gaza, and particularly in Gaza City. And then you had that Israeli strike on Doha, which embarrassed the president with his friends in the Gulf and his allies there. And then a sort of critical moment at the United Nations in New York where the president moved closer to some of the demands from the Arab and Muslim countries. And I think that unlocked then this whole process for being able to get this framework in place. And he was then putting unprecedented pressure, first on Mr. Netanyahu to come to the table and end the war, and also on Hamas, increasingly regionally isolated and under pressure via Qatar, Egypt and Turkey, particularly, able to therefore pressure Hamas. And it was that sense of momentum, I think, that has got us to this point, albeit that, remember, it was still, I think, a calculation by both sides that, in the context of that pressure, that now was the moment to do the agreement, and there was more to be gained by that than continuing the war.
He does talk, though, in big global terms, that this is a peace deal. He talks about peace in the Middle East. Of course, as you know so well, this is just the first phase of what is certain to be a long, tortuous process of negotiations to move from the ceasefire, the hostage and prisoner exchange, to the more difficult aspects of this deal. And it will take, President Trump will have to still be focused on the details. And he's a very busy president, and that's not guaranteed, is it?
Yeah, I think their opportunity is to try and build on the, incredible sense of breakthrough at the moment and use that momentum to try and keep going with this, to get into that very, very difficult second phase. But remember, the speed with which this deal was reached has the potential also to be the factor that derails it, because it may be that issues that have just been sort of glossed over, not ironed out properly, left as vague, become the real hurdles that could end up with a collapse of this whole process if it isn't for real further American pressure, guarantees to both sides that they will stick with this in the coming days and weeks.
Yes, indeed, and we'll have to continue our special coverage and keep an eye too as journalists on this process. You're watching BBC News as we continued to
Well, you're watching Focus on Africa, live from Nairobi on BBC News. Our top stories. The besieged Sudanese city of El Fasher is now apparently encircled by a wall, locking its residents inside.
We know that people are dying in the desert and people are dying on the road as they try to find a way out through this wall. They have literally been walled in to die.
Elsewhere, voters in the Seychelles returned to the polls for a runoff election after last month's vote did not produce a winner.
Increasingly acrimonious, I think it would be fair to say, and tense, and a lot of accusations and counter-accusations flying right, left and centre.
And also, coming up in the programme, Cameroon will also be voting for a president on Sunday. But people in the country's two English-speaking regions may miss out on the ballot for the second time.
So I just want that life should go on.
Thanks for tuning in. This is Focus on Africa. I'm Wahiga Mwaura. Now, we begin tonight with more trauma for the besieged residents of the Sudanese city of El Fasher. It's now believed that the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces have completed building a wall made with earth around the city. If confirmed, the 57-kilometer-long wall would trap more than 300,000 people inside the city. Researchers from Yale's Humanitarian Research Lab used satellite imagery to see what is happening in the area. They showed the paramilitary group has also reinforced its main checkpoint at Melit Gate, one of the only 4 exits from El Fasher. This means no one is able to leave the area. With all major exit routes apparently sealed, civilians attempting to flee report extortion, arbitrary detentions, disappearances, and sexual violence at RSF-controlled checkpoints. Conditions continue to be dire in El Fasher. Earlier, 13 people died after an attack on one of El Fasher's last remaining hospitals, which has been blamed on the RSF. Well, the report documents systematic arson attacks carried out by RSF fighters in the city's Daraja Ula neighborhood between the 4th and 8th of October, with satellite images showing more than 1,700 square meters of homes destroyed by fire. El Fasher, under siege for more than a year, is the last major foothold in Darfur for Sudan's army, which has been battling the RSF since April 2023. El Fasher's fall would mean that the RSF would be in full control of the western region of Darfur. Now, earlier on, I spoke to Nathaniel Raymond, who's the executive director at the Humanitarian Research Lab, Yale School of Public Health. And I began by asking him for more regarding their observations.
Attempting to escape El Fasher. And as we watch them from space, we can see them run into earth walls that are 9 feet high with snipers all around. So what we're seeing right now, given the events of the past 24 hours, where we are starting to see house-to-house arson by RSF in one neighborhood in El Fasher, we believe we're entering a new phase that will be marked by targeted ethnic killing.
But there have been reports of limited access to food. Some even had to eat animal feeds to survive, makeshift sort of bomb shelters because of the shelling all around them. What are you hearing about what some of the conditions have been and how civilians are trying to survive?
The civilians here in El Fasher have been in what's called IPC 5 level food insecurity, the highest level of famine, for 15 months. Plus, in Gaza, they've been at this level for 1 month, approximately. And so the people in El Fasher have been at the level of Gaza for 15 times longer than Gaza. So to answer your question, how are they surviving? The answer is they are not. They are starving to death. They have run out of continued access to clean water. They are being killed at the mosque in prayer by suicide drones. Their community kitchens are being bombarded.
What do you believe is the RSF's long-term plan? The ambitions for El Fasher are clear, and it does look like, short of, a change in terms of the deployment of the army, they may get their way and take over Al-Fasher. What happens next, and what does this mean more broadly for the balance of power in this region and in the country?
Their goal is to liquidate the non-Arab population of Darfur, the Zaghawa, the Fur, and the Massalit through killing them and displacing them. It's very clear what they're doing. They're doing exactly the same acts that Ali Khashayb was convicted for this past week in the International Criminal Court. They're simply doing the work of the Janjaweed under the name of the Rapid Support Forces.
I mean, when that's been posed to them in the past, they've denied it. They've blamed other militia that they claim operate under, their banner, so to speak. Have you, some of the findings that you have you by any chance known if the RSF have seen them, have responded to them, including this latest findings around the structure being built around Al-Fasher?
Yes, we know we've seen them, and the RSF have executed people on camera. The fact of the matter is they're recording their own crimes. We know that RSF pays attention to our reports, and the Rapid Support Forces are able to do what they're doing. The success of the Rapid Support Forces here is because of their benefactor.
What are you hearing about the medical access situation, this shelling of this hospital, a significant hospital in the region? What does that mean, and how dire also would you say the medical situation is in Al-Fasher?
There's basically no functioning hospitals left. The report we have from the overnight that we're working to confirm is that a hospital has been hit, killing 12 patients, including children. We're working to find out more about that now as we analyze satellite imagery collected in the overnight. The fact of the matter is that we are seeing a systematic pattern of RSF attacking hospitals, attacking mosques, attacking shelters, attacking kitchens. They are also now, as we showed last night in our report, they are burning houses systematically in areas such as Deir al-Jula and Abu Shuk, which are the last refuges, we believe, of the civilians who are still alive in Al-Fasher.
We've recently heard of attempts by the African Union to jumpstart a peace process or talks, if nothing else, in Sudan. We've also heard of the Quad, the USA, UAE, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, also calling for a humanitarian truce followed by a ceasefire, etc. What do you make of these initiatives, and which one do you feel that, most confident about?
I feel confident about none of them. The people of Al-Fasher can't eat press releases to survive. The RSF, who are Rezaget people, are about to capture the last city in Darfur and control the region, which will be a base from which they can fight for years to come. There is no scenario where the RSF and SAF are going to agree a deal in the current situation.
Now, voters in Seychelles are heading back to the polls in a high-stakes presidential runoff that could reshape the country's political landscape. Incumbent President Wavel Ramkalawan is battling to keep his job after his party lost its parliamentary majority in last month's legislative elections. He faces opposition leader Patrick Omeni, who narrowly led in the first round and is promising policy reversals on key issues, including the country's retirement age and a controversial hotel project near a protected coral atoll. At the heart of the campaign are environmental concerns, economic pressures, and questions about the country's future direction. The outcome could determine whether Africa's smallest nation ends up with a divided government or sees a return of the once dominant United Seychelles Party. Results are expected by the end of the weekend in what's shaping up to be one of the tightest races in the country's history. For more on this, I spoke to freelance journalist Patrick Muirhead, who began by telling me more about the mood on the islands during this period.
Increasingly acrimonious, I think it would be fair to say, and tense, and a lot of accusations and counter-accusations flying right, left and centre.
Just remind us once again what is at stake in this runoff and why it's being so closely watched.
Well, the two leading candidates out of 8 who participated in the first round, neither of them got the necessary 50% to win outright, so we go to a second round. And there was only 2.5% or something between those two leading candidates, so there's all to play for. The also-rans, between them, they managed to accumulate about 4.5% of the vote. So both of these two leading candidates are now very eagerly chasing that floating voter. And about 2,000 people didn't vote at all or spoiled their vote. So both these two leading candidates are very keen to get hold of those votes. It's very, very tight indeed. So what we're seeing is the also-ran candidates mainly uniting around Dr. Patrick Emley, and that is giving him confidence that he will ultimately win. However, there were also about 2,000 people or so who didn't vote in the first round, and of course, the President Ramkalawan and Dr. Emley are both hoping that those 2,000 will lend them their support.
Well, we saw the president being outperformed by the leading